Live from the NBC News radio broadcasting studios of KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM, located in beautiful California. Thanks for tuning into the Water Zone. Good afternoon, I'm Rob Starr, along with Mr. Mike Barron, also known around here as Mr. Mikeypedia, and together we are collectively known as Da Water Boys. Well, we're expecting a storm tonight, and it's supposed to bring lots of 3/4 of an inch per hour, is what I'm told. Starting up north, they said it should be hitting here probably between 11 to 2 in the morning. And I'll be asleep, but I'll probably hear it. And it's supposed to rain tomorrow, so it's going to be a wet one. And it's supposed to go through Friday and maybe into Saturday. The weather's still going to be cold out here. I was hoping for warmer weather, but we need the rain, and so if I had a choice, I have to pick the rain. So everybody's having a good week. We had a good week. Yesterday, we were at a water agency called Liberty Utilities out in Apple Valley, and they had a contest going called Extreme Water Makeover. And what they did is they spoke and contacted their top 25 water wasters, single-family residents, and there are quite a bit of them, but they took the top 25. And the idea is they were going to pick a winner out of the 25, and the winners get to have a complete makeover of everything water in their house and outside their house. So, for example, the Toro company will be providing a new irrigation system and a smart irrigation controller with a product called Smart Logic, which ties everything together on the cloud. And you can use apps on your phone anywhere in the world, and it reduces water greatly. There's also some weather sensing systems and precision soil sensors, high-efficiency spray nozzles and such. So that's a good thing. There's also a company called Niagara, which I'm sure everybody has heard of. They make faucets and shower heads and things, and they're going to replace, if needed inside their home, all brand new fixtures. Then there's an appliance company who's going to donate brand new dishwashers and washer and dryer, anything that uses tons of water in the house. And they're doing this study. What it's going to be is they're going to do this study through September and show the rest of the city and the water users how much they can reduce their water usage by using the right products. And then this winner also they're going to get flown to the Water Smart Innovation Conference that's in Las Vegas in October. They're going to get to tell their story as the water agency is going to do. And Liberty is a pretty big, for those of you who are not familiar with Liberty Utilities and may not live in those areas, they actually operate in 16 different states within the United States. And they do both electrical and they do water as well. So that could be an exciting thing for the winner, and so they announced that yesterday, and I was there at that event, and that worked out well. Then we're also doing, just so everybody knows, because we're very proud of it, and we don't usually use this as a Toro showplace and hawk our products, but we're partnering with a distributor called Ewing Irrigation, who's all throughout the United States. And we're going to be retrofitting the California School for the Deaf that's out here in Riverside. So we're very excited about that. We're told it's only one of 4 schools run by the government. Actually, the state of California runs that, and that's going to be pretty exciting. So we're going to do our news portion. We're going to welcome the purveyor of Maven's Notebook, Miss Chris. Are you there, Chris?
Hey, good evening. How you doing?
Good. And that's Chris Austin for everybody, and you should know her by now because she is the maven of water in California. She knows anything and everything about water. Turn your mic on. There you go.
And you can too if you go to mavensnotebook.com.
That's right. So what's exciting? You know, we have our guest after you.
Oh my gosh.
You probably know him and spoken to before. It's Senator Bob Hertzberg.
Oh, yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and he's chair of the Natural Resources and Water Committee. So he's going to be on after you, and we had a great conversation with him. But you're exciting, too, and we love to have
hey.
You're our regular. We love you.
Well, let me tell you, I had to go up to Sacramento on Monday because I had an advisory committee meeting Monday night. So I just went up to Sacramento Monday afternoon, came back Tuesday on a plane. And I get to Sacramento Monday afternoon, and I get my rental car, and I start driving down the freeway, and there's this massive traffic jam. And as it so happened, they had this huge hailstorm come through, and it dropped so much hail that it was effectively snow.
Wow.
And it was so much snow that it coated grass that you couldn't tell. I mean, I'm talking inches of hail all over the place. And there were accidents, and all the freeways were a mess, and the surface streets were a mess. It was chaos, absolutely chaos, because it doesn't snow in Sacramento. I'm like, the pilot landed at the wrong airport. What world am I living in?
You thought you entered the Twilight Zone.
Oh,
I did.
I had that Tuesday night. I left the office and I called Mike on the phone, and I was telling him it's hailing. I mean, it was so loud I couldn't.
I could hear it over the phone,
pounding on my windshield and my roof on the car, and it was really, really bad. I said, "Hey, if you're leaving, you better leave now because it's really bad out."
And here's the weird thing: the 91 parallels the 60.
Yeah.
And how many miles are in between those two freeways? Probably not more than 10 maybe?
Yeah.
At most. Not a single drop of water on the 60.
Wow.
I could not. I mean, it was just like a beautiful evening. That is very, very interesting.
Well, I was afraid that the storm would continue because I had to go to Apple. I was just telling the audience I was at Apple Valley last night.
Yeah.
And now they say it's going to be tonight. So I'm glad I didn't go. But it was freezing when I left that place last night.
But they say it's only 40% chance of rain tonight. So I'm
going
thinking,
to 70% in the morning.
Wow.
Early morning, like 2 o'clock.
And I think the further south you are, maybe you won't miss it. But up here, in Santa Clarita, and certainly in the burn areas, I mean, people in Montecito are evacuating.
Really? Oh my
gosh! Yeah. There's, they're getting out. This is the biggest storm we've had this year.
Now,
is it at least in the north?
Have you heard anyone describe it as an atmospheric river, or is this kind of an old-fashioned
climate change?
No, I think this is something from Alaska. It's very cold. Atmospheric rivers come up from the tropics. They're very warm, and they rain more than they snow. This one seems to be snowing more than raining.
Oh, so that's good, right? I mean,
yeah, it is good. It is good.
I know that. Historically, if we can still say there's an average historical reference.
Historical
reference. About a third of California's water needs has been typically stored as snow along our mountain ranges. And, of course, one of the big concerns is with climate change that we would see a change to warmer rain, less snow. And, of course, our infrastructure really isn't set up to capture all that rainfall that will replace the snow.
That's what we're really trying to get figured out. And that's where projects like Sites Reservoir up in Northern California, it means that Sites Reservoir, their plan is to take these flows that come down the rivers when it rains and doesn't snow. The rim dams that we have, Shasta, Oroville, they're really meant to catch snow melt. They're rather high up. There's a lot of rain that falls below these dams. That's what they call unregulated. And those are the flows that Sites Reservoir would pick up and store. That's one of the things they're going for.
Oh.
Interesting.
So what have you heard about the secret meetings they're having about the Delta tunnels?
Oh,
tunnel.
This has been going on for a while. They actually filed this as a complaint at the State Water Board, and the State Water Board went and looked at these ex parte communications, they called them, and they came back and they said, all these, they were non-substantive issues, or they fell within periods outside of the range be called ex parte communications,
right.
So we deny the request. So they've just now turned around and filed a lawsuit to get a judge to
Hey, if Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch only talked about grandchildren on the tarmac, then I believe these folks up in California, Northern California.
I know. It's really dicey. I don't know. I have to tell you, I just think it's not looking good. You know, I mean, the state wants to change to one tunnel, and they're trying to argue that that's not a big change, and the opponents are saying, oh, yes, that's a very big change. And I think, you know, the hope is that they want to get the tunnels project approved before Governor Brown leaves office, because there's no guarantee that the next governor coming in is going to be for this project. And so they need to get it kind of done under, you know, Governor Brown's administration. And I'm sure he'd like to get this thing done, but I think they're going to manage to obstruct it enough. I don't think it's looking good, put it that way. It just seems to move into dicier territory every day.
It just seems like there's more organizations and individuals that oppose the tunnels than what I hear or see that are in favor of the tunnel. But we'll see.
Well, right now there's only basically three choices for governor at this moment. The big ones: Cox on the Republican side, Villaraigosa, and Newsom.
Yeah,
I mean, those are the top three. And do we know what those three would do?
According to Restore the Delta, you know, there's not a tunnel supporter there in the mix.
Wow.
And
for different reasons, probably. You know, the Republican because they don't want to spend the money, and and the Democrats because of the environmental considerations. Although we can't just leave the Delta the way it is, right? I mean, isn't it at risk?
Yeah, we're still going to have to figure out what to do in the Delta. I think, you know, my concern is that we're not going to plan a solution. We're going to fail into one, and if we fail into one, it's just, you know, it's going to be one of those things they do that's going to have to be rushed through because it's going to be an emergency situation, and you know. And I don't think that's the way to go. But this is such a controversial thing, and the people that are against it are very determined and good. And you know, it's kind of like, I think, if you have a lawyer and you're looking at a case, if you look hard enough, you can find reasonable things or, you know, reasons to throw up flags, and they look at absolutely everything. Wow. And they throw up a flag at absolutely everything.
Well, you know, there's also both sides like to shop judges too for decisions. So that's getting pretty sad when, you know, you can get a lawyer and I know this judge will do this. So I mean, they're supposed to be unbiased. So.
Well, the thing is, the State Water Board finds itself in sort of a strange position where it grants the rights, but it's also the hearing officer for protests and stuff. It's all sort of all within one agency. And when they have a claim, you know, or something going on like this, then theoretically that staff is sectioned off and they actually physically relocate them, and they're not supposed to talk amongst themselves about the situation, and it just seems just kind of difficult. But the problem is that these issues are so thorny. You just can't go before a judge and have the judge, you know, he has to understand what all this water stuff is. If he doesn't, how can he make a relevant decision? So it's tough. There's talk about moving State Water Board hearings into the under the administrative law system, where there would be a judge, you know, in the administration section that would hear these cases. But again, is that person going to have any experience or understanding of these really technical issues? And things at the State Water Board are really technical.
Oh, it's all sometimes in the perception of how it's presented too.
Well, you know, they get down to things like, you know, is there 300 CFS flowing by Chips Island in March or in April? And, you know, and the water quality standard at, you know, such and such place. I mean, they're down into the the nubs of it all.
Yeah.
It's really
Well,
highly detailed and incredibly boring.
But part of that rationale, though, is to, quote, manage water and also to ensure the quality of the water that's ultimately consumed by us residents, in the state of California. So, I mean, they deal with a lot of issues. If you can go online, they're fairly transparent in terms of letting you sign up for emails that tell you what every board meeting or every committee meeting is scheduled to discuss, and it's just
Well, that's part of the transparency they have to have in the government to show you that, and I think that's important. But you're right, and Chris, you're right about they get down to the niblets of these things. It's like, I don't want to reference this, but it's like the OJ trial when they start talking about the alleles and the DNA and all of those kind of things. I mean, the average person sitting on the jury has no clue
what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And just like in that case, I think if you just dig in, and now you're micro looking at every move that every person makes, you always find something. It doesn't mean they meant it on purpose. Sometimes it's some low-level staff member that just checked the wrong box.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden, everyone's all up in arms.
Well, Chris, this issue about making conservation a California way of life and leading to this, I guess, trial effort to make permanent and put into the legal code in California the seven water wasting, sins.
Not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I just was curious if that's what we ought to call that now, the 7 deadly water wasting sins. To try to remember what they are, but have you heard much discussion about that? Because there seems to be some blowback from the water agencies, the local, maybe regional water agencies, against these 7 edicts being permanently engraved in the California law.
Yeah, people are, the agencies are not happy with, a lot of them are not really happy with this idea. It's pretty tough a thing to put on the water agencies, in a sense, that they have to enforce these things. It's much like the power situation. The power companies are trying to get their larger power users to cut back, but there's a lot of people that are like, I don't care about cutting back. I'll pay for what I use.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the government is mandating that the power company, cut their use, because you can't keep, building new power plants all over the place. And I don't know, and so it's the same sort of thing coming in, on the water agencies. And there are a lot of legal issues too, with water rights and stuff,
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing to do.
Well, I think it's interesting that the State Water Resources Control Board decided to continue to take public comment on the proposal as opposed to just moving forward. I really thought that was going to be a slam dunk. It's going to pass and it's going to become law, back on February 20th, I think, when it was presented to the board. But anyway, I know you will keep us posted on any developments there.
Well, it always goes back to that question: who owns the water?
Yeah, it's
the state of California, the people of the state of California. But we all own the water, so therefore, it really isn't about ownership; it's about control. Right. Who controls the water?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that water is money, and it's hard. I think overall, if flying up to the 50,000-foot level, water is oversubscribed in California. We're taking too much, and we have to give back something. We have more in our rivers, not a lot, but we need to do a better job of taking care of our environment overall. I'm talking wide picture of the state of California, but figuring out who is going to give back their water, that's the rub.
Well, Hertzberg was talking about he's introducing a bill to stop or to eliminate water going out to the ocean.
Basically, wastewater.
But the water coming out of the delta, that fresh water, also freshens up the San Francisco Bay, and that is an important ecosystem too. And if you say we're not going to ever let any fresh water out of the delta, then San Francisco Bay is that suffers.
And
there's an ecosystem there.
Yep, and that's not going to happen. We know that.
And water flowing out to the sea, is not that's not necessarily wasted. We need more water to flow out. The San Francisco Bay is suffering its own water quality issues.
Well, the interesting thing is his concept, which I thought was an interesting concept, was by doing this provocative law or talking about it, people say, well, hey, how can you keep all of that treated wastewater from going out to the ocean? Well, you've already got the piping system that collects it and sends it out to the ocean. Just kind of reverse those pipes and use it to store water underground, as well as to on the ground, and let it seep into.
Just making a U-turn.
What's that?
Just making a U-turn.
Yeah, making a U-turn. So I thought that was very interesting in terms of saying, hey, do what Orange County does, but just do it on a wider scale. So we'll see. We'll see where that's going. Well, listen, we are coming up to our commercial break that keeps our station going and our show going. But Chris, as always, thank you for your insights and for your quick update on what's happening in California water.
And everybody go to www.mavensnotebook.com, find out more about what she does, and you'll be thrilled and amazed. And then you can have a decent conversation with your neighbors, because then you'll know what you're talking about.
I think that's a great idea.
Great.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay. Good evening, guys.
Great.
Likewise.
We'll be back in a moment. Please stick around. You're listening to The Water Zone on KCAA, 1050 AM, and we'll be right back.
This is Brooke's yard, and Brooke loves spending time with her kids. What she doesn't love are the ugly bare spots in her lawn. That's why Brooke uses Scott's Easy Seed. Unlike seed alone, with proper care, Easy Seed's all-in-one growing solution grows grass anywhere. The first time, guaranteed. This is a Scott's yard. Pick up Scott's Easy Seed today.
Are you looking for a place to buy your landscape and gardening items? Come visit us at Site One Landscape Supply. We offer a large and quality selection of irrigation, landscape, and outdoor living products such as Toro's water-efficient precision nozzles. Site One Landscape Supply has over 30 locations right here in Southern California, and we are the largest national wholesale distributor of landscape supplies in the United States. Site One's knowledgeable and friendly staff is equipped to help you with all your landscape, irrigation, and outdoor living projects. Whether you're redoing your backyard into a drought-tolerant garden or creating a water-efficient landscape for your client, Site One has everything you need, including the latest in water-saving technologies, drought-tolerant plants for your yard, irrigation supplies, fertilizer and weed control products, landscape accessories, hardscape products, outdoor lighting, and much, much more. Visit SiteOne.com to find a store near you or stop by today. Site One. We are stronger together.
Hey, welcome back to the Water Zone with Mike and Rob. Hope everybody's having a great day, and we have a good guest coming up, so we'll roll right into that.
Sounds good.
Well, our next guest is a very distinguished person. His name is Bob Hertzberg, and for all of you who do know, he's the state senator in California. He's the first former Assembly Speaker in 86 years to be elected to serve the California State Senate, and only one of 6 lawmakers in California history to serve as Assembly Speaker and subsequently win a seat in the Senate. He represents nearly 1 million residents of the San Fernando Valley in the Senate. A little background about him, and Bob Hertzberg earned his law degree from Hastings College of Law and became a member of the California Bar. He co-authored a manual on real estate law published by the University of California and represented clients at several Los Angeles area firms. The Los Angeles Business Journal named him one of the top 10 lawyers in Los Angeles, and the Daily Journal, which is a legal newspaper, has repeatedly named him as one of the top 100 lawyers in California. In 1996, Mr. Hertzberg ran for the 40th Assembly District seat, a slice of the San Fernando Valley that took in North Hollywood, Studio City, Van Nuys, and Woodland Hills. He won by a large margin. And re-elected twice by even wider margins, he also was twice chosen by his colleagues as the 64th Speaker of the California Assembly, a post he held from April 2000 through February 2002. So I'd like to welcome Senator Hertzberg to the Water Zone. Welcome.
Hey, thanks so much, and thanks for doing the show. I love it. It's a very important issue.
I appreciate that. Hey, I had a question, I have a few questions to ask, but I added one here. The last time we had somebody on who knew about water was Senator Pavley. And she was on our show a while back, and she was chair of the Natural Resources and Water Committee, which you are.
That's what I am, yeah, chair of Natural Resources and Water.
So the question I never got to ask her, how does each senator get assigned or select which committee they want to serve on? Is that something you guys choose, or it's
no, it's the as I was speaker, I chose every chair, and they serve at the pleasure of the speaker, or in this case, the president pro tem of the Senate. So the president ultimately has the ability to appoint who they want, and for whatever reason they want. And of course, members simply indicate their preferences for these things, and that's how you get selected.
Oh, okay. I never knew that. I always wanted to ask that question. I never did. I was thinking about it the other night. I said, I got to ask. A lot of people don't know that. So it's just like today with all the things you read in the newspaper about the federal government. Nobody knows how anybody gets these positions and how they choose it or if they're assigned it and so forth.
Congress is different than Sacramento. Sacramento, it's really the power is in the leader to make these decisions. In Congress, there's a whole committee process that does it, and there's seniority and the like. I mean, there's situations where a member might run crossways with a leader and be stripped of their chairmanship overnight. Those things happen.
Right. All right, so question. So what are the differences we face in water policy today versus when you began in the legislature back in the 90s?
Well, I want to frame a little bit deeper, because I'm kind of, most people from the urban areas don't really think about water. They turn on the faucet on, the water comes out, it's clean, they're not big issues. You generally have the farmer types in the Central Valley that are more big on the water committee. If you look historically, Fran Pavley was an exception because they put parks and natural resources together with water a few years ago. And I started as a student of history back in the 70s, and wrote my dissertation actually on water policy, and have since been fascinated and deeply involved in this. So I care deeply about it. But what the history of California, in the simplest terms, has been: Southern California has no water. It sticks a straw in the north and sticks a straw to the east in the Colorado River, and that's principally, there's other exceptions, of course, but largely speaking, it's been our history. Well, there's been a bunch of changes since then. Change number one is the Colorado River also serves 7 states. Well, all of a sudden, population has grown in Arizona and Nevada, in Las Vegas in particular, and they're saying, hey, you guys are stealing all the water in L.A. You've overdrawn your allotment by 900,000 acre-feet, which is almost double of what L.A. uses alone, and we want that water. Second thing is the north. We've had environmental issues with the fish. We've had the farmers have had problems. We've also had droughts. We know from a UCLA Center for Climate Stimulus did a study that says that we could be in a situation where the snowpack could shrink as much as 60% in the next coming 3 decades. That's the source of water from the north. So it's all these factors have happened, and the last factor is, as we've seen in Israel and Saudi Arabia and parts of Africa and India, there's all sorts of new technologies that have come up that allow us to manage water policy much better. I can talk about those, but that's the large framework of what's transpired in the differences of what went before and what's happening now.
Okay. And what do you see as the toughest challenges you're facing statewide with water?
Well, it's interesting. It's a weird thing. I mean, certain areas, homelessness, we're seeing all these big articles in the paper and the like, and they capture people's attention. It's one of these things where your problem in the water world is the success of the engineers and the geniuses who run this stuff. I just gave a speech to a whole bunch of these general managers and the like at one of their conferences on the Urban Water Forum. And, they're successful. It's like the electrical people. There's no gigantic fires and problems and outages. By and large, it works. You turn on the faucet, there's water. They plan for it years in advance. And so there's no real political urgency, like, what happens with respect to attacks or what happens with these schools, with the guns and stuff like that. Politically, it requires what I call, in a committee that I was involved in, to think long. Decisions take dozens and dozens of years. In Northern California, we're still fighting the fight that we fought in 1982 involving getting water out of the Delta into Southern California, around the Delta, when the first Jerry Brown was governor. It just takes decades. So extraordinary patience, extraordinary attention, and then lastly, the nature of the old law, what was called beneficial use, basically use it or lose it. So when those rights were given away over 100 years ago for Colorado River, these farmers got millions and millions of acre feet. Well, under the common law, if you don't use the water, you lose it. So they have no incentive to line their canals or to use efficient systems and, just waste the water so that they continue to buy it at a fraction. I mean, a small fraction of what we pay in Los Angeles. And so, and then you got the different interests. The North knee-jerks against the South. The farmers that their whole lifeline depends upon their water, and they think about it years in advance. So it's a real puzzle, but one that quite frankly, you look historically, whether it started with Bill Mulholland in 1913, or I've got my office. When you come to my office, is called the William Mulholland Room. And there's a big picture of Bill Mulholland and the building of the canal. It's a big issue for me, but it's time to re-engineer and rethink water policy.
Yeah. I just so you know, I used to live in your hood and voted for you a few years back.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
So I want to make that clear so people know, I'm not trying to show favoritism, but I want the truth out. So I know when, Southern California, when it rains like it's going to do tonight and tomorrow, 90% of that water is going to go to the ocean.
Is that horrible? Is that horrible?
And I know, for example, IDE Technologies, when they built the desalination plant in San Diego, Carlsbad area, it took 17 years to go through the process and build it. Is anybody thinking to cut the time? I mean, I know everything goes through committees and goes through time, but it just seems forever and ever and ever.
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. I couldn't agree with you more, but let's start with stormwater. Man, I had a fight last year like I've never had. Speaker of the House. Once Governor Brown's gone, I'm going to be the most senior Democratic official in California state government from back in the 90s. No one's been around that long. Worked on all these big fights way back when, and it's significantly different. And so stormwater, this whole issue of stormwater makes my blood boil, right? Here it is, you got free water, just like the sun or the wind. It hits the earth. Why don't we capture that? Why don't we grab it and recharge the groundwater? Are you nuts? And so I had to fight for 2 years for a bill that basically gives local government the ability, if it's for property-related purposes, not to clean up the water to send it to the ocean, you can clean it up and put it back in the groundwater and use it for the future. So we now have put the framework in place. And it was a fight, let me tell you, for reasons that aren't really relevant, but we got it passed. And I think it's going to be have a big impact on the ability to capture stormwater, because the federal government says you got to clean up the water to go to the ocean. So we're paying $1,035 to $1,100 an acre foot. An acre foot is 1 acre in size, 1 foot deep of water. That's our water measurement. Like we measure inches in feet, we measure things in acre feet in water world. And so we're sitting here, and hopefully this thing will come into effect and have big impacts locally to be able to capture it. But again, going to your second point, which is time, man, things are in the water world are judged by decades, and I don't disagree with you. And the only thing I would say is that climate change, these snowpacks, these other challenges, I think will speed up the process.
Yeah, I know.
Because people are fearful about it,
I know I read a lot, obviously keep up with water. In fact, Mike just joined us here. So,
hey, Mike.
One of the things that I worry about is like in Shasta and other places, when it was getting full, they let all the water out and put it back into the bay. And I'm thinking, God, why we need water? Why are they dumping it all?
Well, because there's no delivery system. That's what the tunnel's for. The tunnel is to be able to, without disturbing the very sensitive ecosystem and potential for floods in the Delta, to put that tunnel underground so that you can capture that water and bring it down into the storage systems here. And one of the great challenges between Democrats and Republicans centers around the word storage, right? Republicans generally, in broad terms, more favor the notion of surface storage, meaning create reservoirs or lakes. Democrats don't like surface storage, generally, broadly speaking, because they think that it has an impact on the environment. So the answer to that question is what's called conjunctive use, which is underground storage. There's all these places where you can put spreading fields in and basically let the water seep through the ground. The nature helps further clean it up, and it goes underground. And then when you need it, you stick straw in the ground, a well, so to speak, and grab the water out. And that's I have on my door of my office, as you walk in my office, a map that outlines all the areas in LA and Orange County where we have porous ground, and we could use it to recharge the groundwater, which is where I think we need to go.
Senator Hertzberg, this is Mike, the other half of the water zone, and I'm intrigued by your comments. Was there something in your background, in your career, that attuned you to the opportunities with conjunctive use and groundwater storage?
Yeah, before you got on the radio, what happened was, as a kid, I went to University of Redlands, and in order to graduate with honors, I was a history student, California history. In order to graduate with honors, you need to do a thesis. That was the requirements at Redlands. Well, in history, I said, this is stupid to go and write about Thomas Jefferson or John Adams or whatever the case may be, because all you're doing is using secondary sources. I wanted to use primary sources. So what happened was, I started researching in Redlands, going through it. Was then the Citrograph, before we had all these things done, going through 2,000 editions of the Citrograph from the 1800s, talking about, trying to get a story from the area because I could get access to stuff, went through thousands and thousands of deed transfers, and basically came up with the story of Big Bear Lake, which was initially Redlands Water Company, and the water source, by capturing the water in the mountains for the citrus growth in San Bernardino County. It's a fascinating story, all original research, and just got me interested in the issue. This is 1976, 42 years ago. Jess Unruh then put me on a commission when he was state treasurer that oversaw $7 billion of construction and water projects, and it was really a fascinating area. And kept interested. When I was speaker, I helped negotiate what was called the Quantification Settlement Agreement among the 7 western states, I know Colorado, the lining of the All-American Canal, which is the canal along the bottom of California, so we could save that water that was seeping in the ground from a dirt ditch and use it for San Diego. And have just become deeply, deeply involved in this issue. It's been for more than 40 years, and quite frankly, it's taken me that long to figure it out, because man, oh man, as Shevitz, is it complex.
That I can agree with you, definitely. So that is so fascinating that at such an early age, doing primary research, looking at primary sources, and
it was fantastic.
I used to go up to Big Bear Lake, and I never realized that the original cause there was to provide water for citrus growth. I always thought.
Well, as a matter of fact, the genius of it was this guy Frank Brown. It's a fascinating story. I could send you my dissertation. It's really, I don't know how well written it is, but the story's good. Which is, a guy comes in. The whole group of people came to Redlands from Yale, from Connecticut. It's a big, huge, very wealthy area. Redlands, called Redlands because the land was red, and Frank Brown was a guy who basically was a genius, an engineer who came out of Yale in 1872, and I can't really remember this stuff. And he built the dam, the first arch-type dam that displaced the weight of the water against the side of the mountains, which was stone. And so it was 3 feet at the top and 15 feet at the bottom, rather than the old model of a dam of just put a mile of dirt to hold back the stuff. And it became internationally known for that reason. But there's just such a great, rich story behind this stuff, and it just fascinated me. And certainly, water is one of the critical issues. As I suggested earlier, you go walk in my office, above my door it says the William Mulholland Room. If you go to my office in Sacramento, there's a big, huge picture of the opening of the aqueduct in November 22nd, 1913, on my wall. I'm a water guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, through and through.
That's why I love being on your show. You're the water show. This is fantastic.
We have a wealth of information, I have to say, and I had never really thought about characterizing perspective on water conservation, or what maybe water storage in terms of political polarity, but
Well, one of the other Florida stories, Mike, it's fun, is that the San Fernando Valley was, the history, Chinatown, the movie, is true. Basically, what happened was these were all separate towns. City of Van Nuys, after Isaac Van Nuys, and Lancashire, after his father-in-law, Isaac Lancashire. And all these little communities were separately incorporated cities, all of which came in, except for the city of San Fernando, Burbank, Glendale, into the city because they wanted the water. And the reality was the San Fernando Valley was a big bathtub, so to speak, what they call a alluvial fan. Big bedrock with shale. That's the reason why when there's earthquakes it shakes so much, because it's got loose stuff, and it's a perfect place to just dump water in. That's what they were doing in the movie Chinatown. They were dumping water, and it was going into the aquifer and the subterranean water storage, and it was literally a gigantic bathtub, and held the water for Southern California. And that was the genius of the first act with the Owens Valley that Bill Mulholland did, William Mulholland, the city engineer, and the second was the creation of the 252-mile aqueduct from the Colorado River, which was a broader group because he didn't have a property tax in L.A. to fund that, so he needed to bring in all these other cities and areas to be able to lean against their property to get enough cash to build that canal.
I do have one just follow-up question, and that is, these huge projects that took a lot of money and time versus some of the other things that are being done now, maybe reclaimed water, groundwater recharge, smaller regional projects. Do you think that the tide has turned to be more of those regional projects as opposed to maybe other than the big fix, the water fix that we're looking at with a one tunnel solution? Do you think that might be the last of the big water projects in California?
Yes. I think there's a fundamental redefining of water policy. I think that the water fix, the big tunnel, will get done, and it will be the last of the big deals. Why? Not because big things are bad for their projects, but we now have a new way to think about water, and that's just like we think about energy, sustainability. Think about this. In round numbers, LA uses 500,000 acre-feet of water. We then take, after we're required under the federal law to clean up water between the place in Whittier and the place at Hyperion, and we dump 500,000 acre-feet of water, into the ocean, all the stuff that comes out of toilets and the streets and everything else under the sun, but we clean it up and we put it in the ocean. So basically, I actually introduced a bill just to give everybody diarrhea, not with the intention of getting it passed, to make the point that said, I'm going to make it illegal to put water in the ocean. Why? Because we have the ability to take, instead of those pipes going to the ocean, to take that cleaned up water, you just take those pipes, you turn them around, and you put them in the spreading fields all around the county and the Orange County. We have plenty of space to do it, and you recharge the groundwater basin. And then instead of having to go and take more water from Northern California and more water from the Colorado River, we use our own water. Orange County, 80,000 acre-feet a year. They are the gold standard in terms of the Orange County Water District, what they've done. They call it blue water. And they clean it up and they drop it in the ground. And then the ground further cleans it up with Mother Nature. And it's just smart. So whether you have stormwater capture, check, done. We've built that system. Recycled water, we're doing that now. Thirdly, water efficiency. I have a bill this year with the governor's package and a couple of other members where we're going to get that done this year to change water efficiency standards and the like. Desal, I did that way back when. It's still too expensive, but it's a way to make it happen. And then, to me, water quality, we've got a bill this year with Senator Monning to deal with that, because we have 300 water districts in California where the water quality is worse than it is in Flint, Michigan, and people are trucking in water. It's horrible. We've got to fix that. And then the last issue that I see in this re-engineering is water markets. Let's change the law so that people down at the Colorado River who have those rights for all that water can sell it to us, and then they'll get rich. Who cares? And we'll buy water for a lot less money than we're paying now. And that way, it puts less pressure on everybody, and it's a much better, more thought-through water system for the future.
Well, in the water issues around Los Angeles specifically, one of the problems that we hear about, not daily, but pretty well often, is the fact of the old distribution system that's 100 years old, and the pipes are breaking.
That's right.
And what's going to happen with those things? How are they going to, how's it going to be replaced? Who's going to pay for it? All of those.
Ratepayers are going to pay for it. What's going to happen is, look, it's just it's the issue of life. If you got a house and now you got it for 20 years, you got to repaint it. It's why we depreciate things, so that you hopefully, instead of using the benefit of depreciation, you're saving the money because you know the life of the product is only so good. We're going to have, and it's going to be hard because digging that stuff up is going to be very difficult. There's new technologies to put a lining inside the pipes that exist. There's all sorts of stuff that doesn't require everything to be dug up. But look, it's just in every context, whether it's your home, replacing the pipes or heating in your own home or whatever it is, it's just the cycle of life. And we're in a situation where a lot of these things were put in a long time ago, and we're going to have to fix them. And it's going to, the bad news is going to cost money. The good news is that the cost can be spread over 30 years. And the other good news is that most people don't think about, I think about as a policymaker, is that when you pay government money in a bond form or something like that, people say, oh, God, we're spending all this money. Well, the reality is when you economically model this and you look at the economic feedback effect, 74% of money that we spend on infrastructure comes back in the form of taxes, payroll taxes, sales taxes, income taxes, and the like. So when you spend $1, not only do you have the benefit of having a system that works, not only do you have the benefit of all this other infrastructure that helps the economy, but the direct cost is much less than people otherwise think. If you're getting it back, most people don't look at it that way, but the reality is you're going to have to fix it, and that's just, there's no way around it.
Yeah.
Well, I am impressed and actually relieved and think highly that you're looking at such a comprehensive approach to making California more resilient with respect to its water resources. Do you have much of a following within the California legislature? It's just the logic that you present, the facts that you present, you seem to have this just instantaneous command of a lot of...
You have the fire in the belly and the passion.
Yeah.
How do you light the others up?
I do have the fire in the belly. I do have the passion, and I got 42 years where I got no skin left on my knuckles. I've been working so hard on this stuff. It's tough. Let me tell you, look, it's not the issue. In Northern California, for the people that represent the Delta, they're pissed. They don't want this pipe as water fix, and they want to stop it. That's just local politics, right? You got to figure out how those things work. In other areas around the state, it's hard to find people in Los Angeles who are as crazy as I am about water. Van Pavley was, from the environmental perspective, what she did for groundwater and the like was just stellar. And Sheila Kuehl, who's a supervisor, used to be an assembly member and senator, who's interested in stormwater. I know, I don't, and so there are some people that are interested and have knowledge on that. There are also between UCLA, Mark Gold, and a number of other people, really smart people, in the Metropolitan Water District in DWP are just replete with unbelievably intelligent people on this stuff. It's just a different club of people. So there are people out there, and certainly it's not hard to get the members when you can sell these ideas and stuff. Because they get it too. They get it. It's just there's so many issues facing us, whether it's gun violence or homelessness or education, or go down the list of all the kinds of issues. And the interesting thing about the legislature is that each of us can pick a different issue or a couple of issues and become expert on it, and then with the confidence we have with our colleagues, be able to talk to them about it.
And is that the process by which you can gain support and ultimately backing for a piece of legislation? Is
That's right.
That one-on-one communication?
That's right. It's all one-on-one. It's all personal. Every time I have a tough bill, some people don't do it, but I go to every committee member, irrespective of party, sit in their office, answer questions, explain it, show respect. And that's just what you got to do. That's what takes the time. Making sausage is a hard thing to do. It's everything personal. I've had situations where I've gone to members of the other party and saying, look, I know you hate this. I know you spoke against it, but I'm asking you a favor. Get it out of this committee for me, or whatever the case may be. Don't vote for it on the floor, but help me out. And that's kind of, it's not easy, and it's people want to criticize you in this day and age for not standing on the soapbox and screaming and beating anybody up that doesn't believe exactly what you believe. But at the end of the day, if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in democracy, what does that mean? It means that somebody in communities that I don't represent are electing people that reflect them, and that person, Democrat or Republican, wherever they are, you're respecting the process. And the idea that, we all have representatives, and if we really believe in the process of representation, it means that we've got to not exactly get what we want every single time. And one of the great challenges we're facing today is with the social media and the stuff, and how people beat you up for one single vote, and not understanding the human complexity of what it takes to run a place as big as California with 4,848 subdivisions of government. It is a morass. It is a Winchester mystery house. But it is what it is, and our job is to fix it or get the hell out of the way.
Yeah. I know with all the issues that California and any state has, I was always curious, unlike a business, where you take the top 3 or top 5 critical issues that really must have, and there's tons of issues you guys work on all day long, I know that, but it just seems to the public that if is there a list somewhere that somebody puts together and says this is the most important thing as number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and make everybody work on that together until they resolve one, and then that comes off the list and another one rises up. I mean, you must pass I know you pass hundreds of bills a year, laws a year, but and I don't know how they can all enforce every single one. I'm not trying to be, pejorative about any of that, but a lot of our listeners want to know how come they don't see a list of what the top priorities are. Everybody says.
Well, here's what happened. Here's why. Government's it's got all these different centers of power, right? It's all diffused. People like having a diffused government so that nobody feels like they're taken over. So the executive branch, the executive has their priorities, whoever the executive is. They command most of the bully pulpit. Then you have 120 legislators. Who's fancy and who has the relationships with reporters? Who are the people who can package stuff in a fun and interesting way that's a cutesy way that somebody wants to cover it? Who's the first person when Princess Di gets killed is going to introduce a paparazzi bill, and they put that in the front page of the paper, right? So part of it is the free press makes determinations in the old days to sell newspapers, today to sell clicks. And it's become a little TMZ, quite frankly, about what this is, in some of these games, and the fact that they don't have enough staff to do what we're doing right now and to delve into a subject. Nobody would sit down and write a story in this depth. And the New York Times, the LA Times is doing it now in homelessness. But by and large, that's an editorial board decision. It just doesn't happen. So what it does, it creates the impression to the public that there's no focus. And then you have the fight between the two parties. You don't generally have consensus between the parties. But what we do, and what I did when I was Speaker, is we say, what are our top 3 priorities? How do we define success? What I did, for example, was to say, we'd sit down with all 50 members of the Assembly at the time. What are our 3 top priorities when we go in the governor's office? And the governor said, can't do this. I don't have any votes for the budget. We knew what those things were. People don't cover that. Second, with respect to each chairman of each committee, what are the top 3 priorities? How do we define success for each committee? What are the urgent needs? Make a case as to what the urgent needs are and why. And then create a report. Like if you looked at some stuff that I did, you'll see what the problem we were trying to solve, and here's what bill we passed, and here's how it solves the problem. Connecting those dots. But those are boring often. No one really pays attention to that. Last year we had a priority. We had transportation and infrastructure, check, done. We had stuff we had the whole thing on cap and trade to get that stuff done, get the money out, make it happen, check, done. We went through a list of each one of the things that we needed to have done, and we had it done. But it's one thing for us to do it and to say it. It's another thing for someone to pay attention to it. But believe me, I think in a very detailed management approach. Even on this water issue, I'm looking at a 5-year event horizon. I've got 5 years left in government service, and I'm going to get my freedom. Get a job.
You got to run for governor first.
Yeah. No, Jesus Christ. So at any event, the upshot is that's what I do. Everything's strategy. I go toward the goal. How do you get there? And that's why I introduced the bill early on you can't put water in the ocean. I wanted to just get everybody's attention to lay the framework to get to recycled water and groundwater recharged through stormwater and all these other things, to lay the framework out. And I speak all over the state on this stuff to try to take we call people in the water world water buffaloes, because that's kind of what it's like. It takes forever to get anything done in the water world, as you correctly noted. So I hope that's helpful in understanding why the answer to that question is it's just difficult. If we could be like, China, where I've been to every province, special district, autonomous region, and municipality, they're told what to do at each regional level. Everybody does it. Everybody toes the line, and the message discipline is in there. We don't have that. We've got whatever the fancy issues of the day occupies the headlines. And today's social media, it's even worse, because all you're doing to get clicks is trying to sell sensational headlines.
Well, do you think that being transparent and having the press not always be accurate in what's reported messes up the system?
They've always been accurate. Everybody's been inaccurate. We tend to look at the world. I'm a historian, as you know, from talking to me now. Philadelphia had a population of 34,000 when this country started. It had 78 newspapers. Right, my grandpa, didn't get past the second grade, coming from Riga, Latvia, and all he did was read the Jewish newspaper.
Well, we're up against a time slot here, so we apologize to the senator.
Well, it's still interesting to know that at the beginning of this country, there was only 34,000 people in Philadelphia, and there were 78 different newspapers. And today, you got a city of a multi-million, and there's 2 newspapers.
Well, everybody, I hope you had a great week. Be prepared if you're out in California for rain. And remember, the most important thing to do this week is to think blue, because
on Spaceship Earth, we are all crew.
Great.
Have a great night.
Absolutely. Stay dry. Bye-bye.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050.